Welcome to another Win Daily Sports Show. Are you tired of my face yet? Are you tired of this? Are you tired of the Phillies hat? Are you tired of the Phillies jerseys?
Thursdays too. Thirsty Thursdays.
Let's go. It is. And a thirsty Thursday, and I might need every single bit of it because the Phillies are going to blow another lead, but that's not what we're doing right now. I know it's opening day. Look, I'm in the garb. We got DFS. We have NBA action tonight. It is a 7-game slate, but I think immediately the first thing that we were talking about was this is kind of getting ugly with the amount of top level and high price players that are out. I mean, you can go through the list right now. I mean, what are the players that we're looking at that are out?
So for the Clippers, you got Paul George still sitting out. So we'll talk about who that affects the most. New Orleans is really shorthanded tonight. Both Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson are not playing in that one. Bradley Beal is still questionable. We're still waiting on news for him. There are a ton of guys getting ruled out. James Harden isn't playing for Brooklyn tonight after hurting his hamstring there yesterday, and he actually sat out the entire fourth quarter. So I don't want to say it was to be expected, but it was what people were leaning throughout the day, and we did get the confirmation that James Harden isn't playing tonight either for Brooklyn. So a ton of star power is no longer available to us on this slate. A ton of value to be had, and there's certain guys that we just got to lock in.
Yeah, and I was about to say, does that make it, since you're narrowing down kind of the top options and players that usually would go off for a slate, is it kind of narrowing down the top options, and now this is we need to hit on the mid-level guys this time and the lower level? What does that do to a slate? Because, again, there's some talent out right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It kind of takes away from the stars and scrubs kind of build where, you know what, we're getting multiple guys that are close to minimum salary, and you know what, you end up trying to get at least three the heaviest hitters on the slate there, where in a game like this where, you know what, you end up having guys in that 4.5K to 6.5K range and on the pricing grid where, you know, these guys are going to get all the run possible. We'll talk about New Orleans. There's a ton of spots there for guys where, you know what, we don't have to go dumpster diving and saying, okay, I'm going to hope that this guy gets 15 points for me because I want Russell Westbrook in my lineup. There's so many good guys in great spots because of the amount of injuries that are there on the slate tonight.
Yeah, and where are those spots going to be at? What games are we looking at for those spots?
We'll start with the New Orleans one because that one probably has the most damage done to the entire slate. So especially when we're talking about our New Orleans team that would have blown out Orlando tonight. Now all of a sudden you're missing Zion, you're missing Brandon Ingram, you're missing Lonzo Ball. There's two guys that are pretty much going to soak up the entire offense, and that's Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Josh Hart. So Josh Hart has been pretty much rebounding at a ridiculous clip since the All-Star game. And even now, more so the fact because you're losing two of your leading rebounders in Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. He's going to have to be active on the wing. Orlando is not exactly the biggest team after shipping everybody out of town there. Of course, no Nikola Vucevic anymore as he's now in Chicago. So Josh Hart is somebody that's going to be of extreme high interest to me on a slate like this. Look, on a normal slate, would I pay $5,700 for Josh Hart? Absolutely not. But on a team now where there's so many looks to go around and he's likely looking at 35 minutes in a game where not only is he going to be rebounding and passing the ball like he always does, but he's going to be one of the leading scorers on top of that. So Josh Hart gets a huge bump. And then the other one's going to be Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Look, we already knew exactly what he was capable of. Lonzo's missed quite some time now. It's been a very quiet, 2-week absence for Lonzo Ball. It's not as if James Harden missed 2 weeks. Everyone knows how long Kevin Durant has been out, but because it's Lonzo in a bit of a smaller market, he's quietly been out for quite some time now. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been the direct benefactor to Lonzo's absence. I mean, he stepped into that starting five, taken over the primary ball handling duties where, the original look would say, hey, Eric Bledsoe is probably going to take over. Not exactly that. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is going out there and doing his thing. He's balling out. He's scoring at will. So, you know what? Nickeil Alexander-Walker at 6,100. Again, if Lonzo was in this game, would we play Nickeil Alexander-Walker? He wouldn't even be on our radar. But because of the fact that they're missing so many guys, someone has to score for this New Orleans team, and they're still playing the weakest opponent on the entire slate. We can't ignore that fact.
Yeah, and that's going to 5,700, so that's already pretty low with Josh Hart. How low are we going with this New Orleans team, though? Like you mentioned Eric Bledsoe at 51, and you just mentioned that that's not a good play. So, I mean, how far can we go down with New Orleans, or are we just sticking with basically Hart and Alexander Walker?
I mean, right now, this is a game where hopefully we have their starting lineup out sooner rather than later. I'm really curious to see what they do with their front court. They have pretty much three guys in there that can play center. You know, Steven Adams can't play power forward, really. He's always been a true center throughout his entire career. But Jackson Hayes and we'll look at Willie Hernan Gomez as well. Like, these are two guys that at such low price points, if one of them finds themselves in the starting lineup, one of them is going to get 20 plus minutes tonight. And at only 3,200, Willie Hernan Gomez is at minimum price 3,000. If one of them finds themselves in the starting lineup, I don't see New Orleans running Steven Adams for 36 minutes in this game. There's absolutely no point. Like, what is the point of running a grizzled vet like Steven Adams 36 minutes in a game where you don't have Zion? They're going to be able to come away with this win. And even if they don't, they could say, okay, well, we didn't have Zion, we didn't have Brandon Ingram. We're not going to mess up the health of our players for the next 2-3 weeks potentially because our guys missed one game. So this is a spot where they can kind of end up showcasing these two guys. And as they battle for trying to squeak into the playing round in New Orleans, they're going to want to see who is the clear number 2 center there. So Willie Hernan Gomez and Jackson Hayes could kind of have a friendly competition there. And on the guard spot, I'm really looking at Lewis Jr. This is a guy that can really ball out, really, really talented individual. And you know what? With increased opportunity comes increased confidence as a player. You know, you picture yourself on that court tonight where, you know, there's no Zion, there's no BI. If Kira Lewis was taking his shots in absence of Zion Williamson, it's not like, hey, I'm taking shots over Zion, I'm taking shots over Brandon Ingram. Right now, he's taking shots over who? Josh Hart, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. These are all guys that are on an even playing field when it comes to skill level. And I really do think that Kira Lewis Jr. can really step up as that 6th man off the bench and really provide a punch where, you know what, Eric Bledsoe's in that exact same situation where Steven Adams is. Are we going to see 30 minutes of Eric Bledsoe tonight? I'm leaning towards the kids. I'm going Josh Hart, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And if I'm punting all the way down, it's Kira Lewis Jr., Jackson Hayes, and Willie Hernan Gomez. Those are probably the 5 guys that I'm really looking at from this New Orleans side.
No, I think another one of that, and I'm not bringing up this team or this game because it's the Sixers, but I mean, Cleveland, Kevin Porter Jr., you know, is somebody that just put up a ton of points. Like, is there anybody, and Larry Nance Jr.'s out, and we see Allen out. Obviously, Joel Embiid's not coming back till Saturday. I mean, is this a game where we can maybe look at some low-level players, not for the Sixers, but I think for Cleveland here?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you, what I found really interesting about Cleveland's rotation the past couple of games is that Cedi Osman has been DNP CD. Like, the coach is just not playing him. He's fully healthy and he's not playing the past couple of games. So you know what? They're rolling Sexland in the backcourt with Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. And then after that, there's so many minutes to be had in the front court. Look, Kevin Love's going to make his return tonight. I don't anticipate him playing more than 15 to 20, considering it's the opening game here. We're probably going to get news on what his hard minute restriction is, but if anything, he'll play even less than that. I'm expecting, you know what, if we're looking at a broad range, probably 10 to 20 minutes, I would say 15 to 20 if we're really trying to narrow it down. It opens up a ton of minutes for Hartenstein down there in the middle. So at 3,700, Hartenstein is somebody that, you know what, if Embiid was in this game, oh boy, look out. Like, Hartenstein going up against Joel, it's just not going to work out. But you know what, the fact that he's going up against Dwight Howard and a couple other guys out there, he's going to be able to maneuver in the paint and, you know what, figure out a way to score. Coming off a game where he just secured 15 rebounds against Utah, who, you know what, when Embiid is out, Utah has a stronger front court because Rudy Gobert is out there, of course, but I'll definitely take Embiid over Gobert any day of the week. That's just, anybody that watches NBA knows that. But with Embiid being ruled out right now, this is quietly a pretty good matchup out there for Hartenstein. And coming off a game where 15 rebounds in 26 minutes, he should be able to do work at only 3,700.
Yeah, so what's the next game we're looking at then? I know Philly, Cleveland could end up being some low end, but that's what we're trying to find, right? About that, as you said, about the 6.5K range, because we're getting some of the top players out. Again, you look at the top of this list: Bradley Beal, Zion Williamson, James Harden, Joel Embiid obviously has been out, but Paul George, a lot of big names. So where are we going next to find that kind of value that
we're going to go to Brooklyn and Charlotte? And this is a game where, because we've been talking about a ton of value, we're going to say, okay, who are going to be the anchors to our lineup? Like, who are we really building around, and why do we need that much value? Look, if you don't play Kyrie Irving tonight, I can't trust you. Like, this is a game where you automatically play Kyrie. It's just, it's not even a question about it. Everybody saw what he did out there in the fourth quarter in a comeback victory, winning 120 to 108 over Houston, which it actually looked like they were going to lose that game. It was actually pretty crazy. Kyrie led the charge. And you know what? This is a game where he's back, he's healthy, he's scoring at will, going up against the Charlotte backcourt that just doesn't know how to play defense, whether it's Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham, Malik Monk. any one of these guys, their strength in their defensive unit is on the wings. So you know what? As much as Joe Harris is going to be able to run a pick and pop and be able to knock down some threes, I don't want to take that matchup against Gordon Hayward or against Miles Bridges or any one of those guys. I want Kyrie going up against Terry Rozier, going up against Devontae Graham. This is a game where Kyrie Irving can legitimately be the highest scorer on the entire slate. So there is a 100% chance that Kyrie Irving is in my main lineup tonight on both sides.
Now we're looking at anything in Charlotte. Obviously, Brooklyn's defense is something that we know about. Kyrie Irving's the main play here. Are we looking at anything on the other end with Charlotte?
Yeah, of course. And you know what? You want this game to go back and forth, right? So like,
yes.
Do you have to full on stack it to end like to an NFL extent where you have a quarterback, 2 wide receivers, and an opposing wide receiver? Doesn't have to be necessarily 4 to 5 guys from the same game. But for me, when I'm looking at Kyrie Irving, who's going to be the core of my lineup tonight, I want somebody from that Charlotte side because I want them to do battle. So for me, it's going to be Terry Rozier or Devontae Graham. I'm going right back to the well with Devontae Graham again. We talked about him last show. This is a guy that is just pulling up from deep at will right now. Back-to-back games where, you know what, he's got 9 3-point attempts in his last one. The game before that was 16. The past couple games has been between that 7 to 10 range. This is a guy that is just pulling up from deep at will. He's taking over the primary ball handling responsibilities when he's on the court over Terry Rozier. And I really like Charlotte's rotation right now with the way that they're offsetting him and Rozier's minutes to the point where, you know what, one of them is always going to be on the court. And the fact that Devontae Graham is getting that matchup against the second unit, guys such as Bruce Brown, any one of those guys, I lean Devontae Graham on this side. Terry Rozier will likely outscore Devontae Graham, but when we're talking about a $1,600 discount there, I do like Devontae Graham's upside in this matchup.
So seeming like you're saying this is one of the games that we are heavily targeting for DFS. So a lot of plays there. So how far, again, this is another one just like it was with that first game, but how far are we going down here with this?
On the Charlotte side, I definitely like Malik Monk. Very similar playing style to Devontae Graham. He just doesn't handle the ball as much. He's just a pure shooter, right? So this is a guy that when he gets hot from deep, he gets scorching hot from deep. This is a guy that can, you know what? It's a game where he can go 7 for 7 in the first quarter. Like he comes off the bench and he goes 7 for 7 from deep, and you're like, oh my God, Malik Monk has 21 points in 9 minutes. Like, what is going on? And then that's the kind of game where, you know what, he's that kind of guy. The spot up 3-point shooters, the Duncan Robinsons, the Joe Harrises, the Malik Monks, the guys like this are just, you need them to have a hot shooting hand for them to really pay off. But you know what, when we're talking about a game environment where Brooklyn does not play any defense whatsoever, I like that a lot. And the other guy is Nick Claxton. Like, look, we've been playing Nick Claxton for probably close to 2 months now, if anything. Like people were looking and we're like they would be looking at our proprietary projections. They're like, man, who's Nick Claxton? Like, what is going on? Why is he one of the top values on the slate? And we're playing him and he's like 2% owned on the entire slate. And we're like, okay, so basically Win Daily is the only people that played Nick Claxton. And this guy's just going off. Like, he's out there and he's just catching lobs from James Harden, dunking away, grabbing rebounds, pushing the pace, and like really getting up and down the court. My one concern here is that LaMarcus Aldridge is back, but even with that, you know what? It's still LaMarcus Aldridge. Like, the one thing that I want to say, like, not to hurt any Brooklyn Nets fans' feelings, of course,
hurt their feelings, please.
Sorry to break it to you, but like, this isn't 2012 where you acquiring LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin makes you a super team. Like, Claxton is a better player right now in this stage of his career than LaMarcus Aldridge or Blake Griffin. And I'll stand by that. Like, if you're looking at what these two guys do, this is not 2012. This is not LaMarcus Aldridge from Portland, where he's one of the top 10 scoring players of the decade and everything. Like, no. These guys are in the latter stages of their career. This is a pure ring-chasing move where these guys are going to be out there for 10 to 15 minutes and just, you know what, they're going to draw coverage because no matter what, they're such established veterans where you have to respect their game on the defensive end no matter what. If that opens up Kyrie for a couple possessions, great. Like, are people going to double LaMarcus Aldridge over Kyrie Irving? No, absolutely not. But just his presence alone in the paint, you have to be wary of when he's out there on the court. So they're going to want to slowly introduce him into their rotation and, you know what, kind of end up getting him into the flow of things. But Claxton is still that guy there. And when Kyrie's dishing out the ball, he doesn't want to dish it out to spot up shooters. He wants to go for lobs. They want to get right to the rim, right? So, and Nick Claxton is definitely that guy. My one concern is the amount of minutes that he's going to play. But look, if he's popping in the projection model, you got to roll it out. That's just a fact.
Next game I want to go to, Golden State, Miami. You're listening to the Win Daily Sports Show, going over the DFS slate with my man Ghost at DFS_Ghost. You can find all this stuff, Ghost Gems, which is a great name. That's an awesome name. And it's easy to use when I'm posting on Twitter, the emoji Ghost and Gem. It's amazing. But WinDailySports.com is where you can check that out. And everything for opening day, NHL picks, all of it, WinDailySports.com. If after the show you have lineup questions or you heard something here and you want further talk about it or about a player in your lineup, WinDailySports.com/chat is where you can do that. A game that we're looking for top players. Obviously, Kyrie Irving is the one that is the anchor on all of our lineups. But guys like Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, could they be putting on a show here? Or is this one that because of Kyrie Irving that it's really hard to find these two guys in your lineups?
This game is going to go completely overlooked, and that's why I have a ton of interest in it. Anytime Steph Curry's on a slate, I always my interest is piqued. It's just he's a guy that can drop 70 DraftKings points on any given night, right? When he gets hot from deep, he is the best shooter of all time in my opinion, and it's just you look at his offensive game right now. It's he's letting the league know that he's back. They're making their playoff push. Draymond's going out there and really facilitating on the offensive end there by carrying the ball a bit more, letting Steph play off ball and kind of doing his thing. So Oladipo being back for Miami kind of puts a wrench in my plans with the Miami rotation because you know what, their depth at guard was already exceptional, but now we have Goran Dragic listed as out. Kendrick Nunn might not play, so we're pretty much looking at Depot, Butler, Robinson, and Depot, Butler, Robinson, and Tyler Hero, of course, and Tyler Hero in that backcourt, right? Jimmy Butler's playing a ton of minutes on the wing, so you're pretty much looking at the former three there. So it's still a great price for Jimmy Butler, like $9,000 on DraftKings, $9,000 on FanDuel, same price across both main platforms there. This is a guy that, you know what, he played great last game. He just couldn't find his shot. You know, he started the game 0 for 8 and he finished 6 for 14. Like he went 6 for 6 at the end, 6 for 7 from the line. Like this is just the guy that when his shot is dropping, he can be that difference maker in that range. The one and only reason why I'm not playing Jimmy Butler tonight is because as we transition to that Clippers game, the last game of the night, I'm going to talk about LA Denver as the last spot that I want to attack here. Kawhi Leonard at 9,300 is very hard to pass up. So that's the one spot where, you know what, for only $300 more, am I not going from Kawhi to Jimmy Butler? Like for me, it's a more competitive game environment. It's going to be a game with less defense out there. Miami still has a very strong defensive unit. You saw what their last game was. Like I saw the game at the end of the third. It was like 60-60 or something. It's just Miami has that ability to end up shutting down your offensive unit to the point where they don't have to drop 130 points to beat you. But this LA Clippers Denver game is pretty much the opposite. Like with the loss of Jeremy Grant and Mason Plumlee in the offseason, Denver doesn't have a strong defense anymore. Now Gary Harris is taken out of the fold on top of that. The Clippers have been getting torched on defense. Like you think with two pretty much perennial all NBA defensive players on their team in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they would have a strong unit, but they don't. They're getting absolutely torched by primary ball handlers. And in this case, you could almost consider Nikola Jokic a primary ball handler. This guy leads the Denver Nuggets roster in assists. Like it's a spot where who out there is going to be able to guard Joker? There's absolutely nobody there. Zubac doesn't stand a chance to be able to guard him. He's not going to be able to get outside on the perimeter. And if he wants to go out there and challenge him, then Joker's just going to be able to drive right by him because he's just a faster guy. So for that reason, I really like Joker. I like Jamal Murray too because, again, we're playing primary ball handlers versus LA. Every single night, it's just a known fact, and except if it's Michael Carter-Williams, then that doesn't count. I don't play Michael Carter-Williams versus LA Clippers, but that's like the one only primary ball handler in the league that I make the exception for. You got to play primary ball handlers versus LA. Reggie Jackson does not play defense. Pat Bev is still out of this lineup. They have no perimeter defense on this team. Kawhi's going to have his hands full by either switching onto Joker. Now he has Aaron Gordon to worry about. He has Michael Porter Jr. to worry about. Is he going to switch onto Jamal Murray? He's going to be a one-man defensive crew out there to the point where he's going to say, you know what, let's just play a zone D, and Kawhi's going to want to outscore a bunch of these guys. So for that reason, I really like Kawhi tonight because the moment they take him off the floor, LA's in trouble, and that's exactly what they don't want to do. So Kawhi at 9,300 is someone that really interests me. Joker, Jamal Murray. I'm looking at the big three from this one. If you're looking for a value piece from this game, it's going to be Reggie Jackson or Terrence Mann. The one issue there is that Reggie will continue to start. Terrence Mann's still getting 30 minutes a game. So They really ride the hot hand. Reggie Jackson has to get hot early and often for them to kind of get going. And for that reason, I kind of lean Terrence Mann because I don't want Reggie Jackson getting hot. I want Kawhi Leonard going off. So when we're talking about making logical decisions with our NBA DFS lineups, it's exactly that. You know what? Reggie Jackson may outscore Terrence Mann tonight, but when you're talking about game theory and you're talking to yourself and you're saying, okay, I'm playing Kawhi Leonard, how does he have the best game of his life in my lineup tonight? You don't want Reggie Jackson scoring the ball. You want Kawhi Leonard eating up all the minutes, all the usage in that starting five. You want Terrence Mann coming off the bench, Luke Kennard coming off the bench. Those are the two guys that you want to attack by pairing them with Kawhi Leonard and end up pairing them with a Denver player such as Nikola Jokic or Jamal Murray.
Yeah, and it seems like you're pretty focused in on a few plays of this slate. And what is the foundation for a lot of your lineups? Because it seems like with the way the injuries are rolling out now, that you already have kind of a sort of a lineup set, and then it's just plugging and playing some of the other smaller pieces in it.
Yeah, exactly. For me, the first thing that I do in the morning, obviously we don't have as much injury news. If we're lucky enough to get it the day before, then that's great. But this is NBA DFS. We know that it mostly comes leading up to lock, if not even after lock, right? So I usually just I take away all the potential things that could really sway my decisions. I don't look at individual players. I don't look at player pricing on either side. I don't look at anything like that. I strictly look at game environment and what exactly that game is going to flow like. So if I'm taking, for example, the Philly-Cleveland game, is Philly a good offensive unit? Yeah, absolutely. Especially when Embiid is back. Like it's probably going to be next week. Like they have Bede, they have Ben Simmons, they have Tobias Harris. I'm a big Shake Milton guy off the bench. Seth Curry can knock down some shots. But it's more that when I look at this game environment, for example, if we're using this first game as the example of the way that I evaluate every game, Cleveland cannot get into an offensive battle with Philly. They're going to get bodied. Like they don't have the offense to be able to handle that. Cleveland's going to really slow down the pace, less possessions in that entire game. Less possessions mean less opportunity. At that point, you're looking at guys like Colin Sexton, for example. I'm a big Colin Sexton fan. I have him on my fantasy team. I write him up in the right matchups. When he's playing Sacramento, I write up Colin Sexton because he's a volume shooter. He's a pure scorer in that two-guard spot. But when you're talking about a guy like that who needs ample opportunity in the form of the amount of possessions that Cleveland's going to have, you don't want to take that chance that Colin Sexton has to go 60 to 65% from the field. You want him to say, kind of like what Russell Westbrook does. Washington plays at the fastest pace in the entire league. Why does Russ score all these fantasy points? It's not because he's shooting 50% from the field. He's going 8 for 25 most nights, 8 for 26, 8 for 27. But the fact that he's out there, he's getting to the free throw line, he's grabbing 15 rebounds, 15 assists per game because of the amount of sheer possessions that Washington has in a game because of how fast that they play. That's what you need from volume-based players. You need guys that really push the pace in a game environment where their opponent allows them to do so because they're able to keep up with them.
So Russell Westbrook, he is 11,000 here on the DraftKings slate. So what are, as we're finishing up here, what are some of the smaller plays that you do have? Again, because there are so many big time names out, where are you looking for mostly? And we got a question here about would you stack the Clippers and Denver game stacks or anything like that? So where are you looking to do that?
Yeah, probably in the form of those three guys. I would probably go 2 Denver, 1 LA, obviously it being Kawhi. I would like to get Joker and Jamal Murray there as my core three if I'm game stacking that one. The main reason why I don't want to have 4, 5, 6 pieces from that game is because when these guys end up having, I don't even want to say career games, but when Nikola Jokic ends up having a really good game, nobody else is touching the ball. Same thing with Jamal Murray, right? It's like a lot of these guys end up feeding off one another, and Jamal being able to run that pick and roll with Joker. Those two coincide fairly well, but I don't want Aaron Gordon taking shots. I don't want Michael Porter Jr. grabbing 15 rebounds because, again, like when I was talking about it before with the game theory, if Michael Porter Jr. is grabbing 15 rebounds, it comes at the expense of Nikola Jokic. There's only so many rebounds to go around. And then if you argue the counterpoint where it's like, okay, well, Michael Porter Jr. could grab 15 rebounds, well, so can Nikola Jokic. Well, then Kawhi Leonard isn't hitting shots because if these two guys are combining for 30 rebounds, who's actually scoring the basketball? Right.
It's hard
at one point you're missing out on something.
You want all the volume to go one way, and instead of funneling it down. Yeah,
that's it, right? So we're talking about a Denver team that really runs through two guys like every single night, and it really starts with jokers. So if you are stuck in that game, I would go Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Kawhi Leonard. That's about it. My core for DraftKings right now, I'm 100% playing Kyrie Irving. After that, I'm waiting for them all to see what it says on Hartenstein. Hartenstein, James Johnson in that New Orleans game as well. Like one of those $3,000 to $4,000 punts. I'm probably gonna end up rostering them. 100% rostering one, if not both, of Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Josh Hart. That's really where I'm starting my lineup. And then when you end up using all the value that I had mentioned, you end up having the salary left over to end up paying up for a Russell Westbrook, a Nikola Jokic, one of those guys. You could end up sliding in Kawhi Leonard. Like you really have ample wiggle room with a ton of these mid-range players that, you know what, we don't have to go dumpster diving tonight outside of one spot. And if that's what it takes to allow me to end up having a Russell Westbrook and Nikola Jokic plus all these other guys, I'll do it every day of the week. The one thing that I did want to mention in that Washington-Detroit game, every time Washington's on the slate, I want to attack that game in some way, shape, or form. The reason why I didn't mention it as one of my core games yet is we need that Bradley Beal news, right? So if Beal plays in this one, am I paying $11K for Russell Westbrook when Nikola Jokic is out there and he's just going to dominate touches tonight in a very competitive game environment? Like that's the thing where, as of right now at 6:15 Eastern time, Washington is not in my core, but I am going to have exposure to this game in some way, shape, or form once the Bradley Beal news drops. Like if Beal plays in this one, people have been looking at his recent production and they're like, oh man, he's kind of struggling, but he's still dropping like 20 points every night. It's just for him, a great game is him dropping 40. So when we're looking at his past games where, you know, he's dropping 25, 5 and 5, and he's shooting 8 for 23 from the field, well, all it takes is for the leading scorer of the NBA to have a 14 for 23 game. And all of a sudden you're looking at a guy that at 9,100 can put up 50 plus, right? So it's a spot where he still doesn't get the respect that he deserves. And everybody knows that I talk about Bradley Beal like every single show. I write about him every single day. It's
just, you should.
Like he leads the league in scoring. Like if this was a Kevin Durant, if this was a LeBron James, if this was Steph, like any one of these guys, people would say, oh, he leads the league in scoring. But because it's Bradley Beal, he's the only player in the NBA that's scoring over 30 points per game. And people don't play him ever. Like it's not a matchup thing. It's like he's always under 5% owned in on slates. Like it just doesn't make sense. So his recent production allowed for his price to drop at 9,100 and only 8,800 on FanDuel. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like he's somebody that I would strongly consider if he gets ruled in. Kind of takes me off Westy just a little bit because of the amount of shots that Bradley Beal is going to take. On the value side, if Dennis Smith Jr. ends up getting ruled out for the Detroit side, I have a ton of interest in Saben Lee. Like that's probably where my Detroit exposure is going to come from. And you know what? Is it the sexiest of picks? No, absolutely not. He doesn't even have a player picture up there. Like it's just what
it's
it
a
is.
Nice looking
right? Like,
jersey,
like,
though, I guess. Right?
It's a great looking jersey, and you're like, hey, who is Saben Lee? You know, but with all these injuries comes opportunity, and that's exactly what we need. Minutes equate money in NBA DFS. You need people that are going to see the court for the most amount of time. And when we're talking about a guy like Hamidou Diallo, who we talked about last show, who had a great game, like you needed Hamidou Diallo in your lineups. Now he's out. And now we're talking about Dennis Smith Jr., who's possibly out too. Who's handling the ball for Detroit? It's going to be Saben Lee. He's a primary ball handler. He has to be able to do something with all this opportunity that he's going to get, right? So going up against the worst defense in the NBA, or one of the worst defenses in the NBA, you got to attack this Washington game. Every single time that they're on the slate, you have to have some shape or form of exposure to this game, whether it's Isaiah Stewart or Saben Lee. One of these guys, Jeremy Grant, is still relatively cheap as well. All their popularity percentages in these contests are going to be way lower than they should be. So I will have exposure to this one. I just don't know where I'm going yet because of that Bradley Beal news.
Yeah, and that's the one we'll be waiting for, and I think that's a good place to end here because all of that, there was a small sample of that where we saw a couple of questions, a lineup, and Ghost was able to go through it, help you out. That's exactly what you can do on the WinDailySports.com chat. WinDailySports.com/chat is where you can check it out, join the Discord, and you'll be able to hear Ghost breaking down your lineup like that, as we did with a few lineups right now. Ghost, great time. I guess the thing we're waiting for all day is Bradley Beal, so obviously that's the thing that that after this stream is down, that we'll be looking for the status of Beal for this game tonight between Washington and Detroit. But great breakdown of the slate. You told me beforehand that you had it focused. You knew exactly where you were going, and you did just that. So great job, Ghost. Always love doing this. And heck, Thirsty Thursday. I'm feeling good about this one.
Thursday. It's going to be a good one. And you know what? While everyone's focusing on opening day, and rightfully so, my Blue Jays even got their first win this season already.
Hey, there you go.
I have with the amount of New York members we have on the Win Daily staff, I had to mention that my Jays ended up taking the first game. Just saying, you know what? This is a spot where everyone's focusing on opening day. The edge is real tonight in NBA DFS. You got to stay on top of it. If you want to make some money, this is a prime spot to do it. And we just got news that Bradley Beal is out.
Yeah, I was just about to say we got the news. So quick reaction to that before we do go.
If you have the luxury of getting Russell Westbrook in your lineup, do it. That's
pretty much it.
That's it. Like brief summary. If you have the luxury of getting Westbrook in your lineup, this guy just dropped 35, 36, and 89, whatever he's dropping. He's taking 50 shots a game. You got to get him in your lineup at this point. Detroit blows. You got to do it. You got to do it. And you need a Detroit player on the other side, either Isaiah Stewart or Saban Lee. It's just call it a gut call. I'm really feeling Saban Lee tonight. My lineups will 100% start with Westbrook, Kyrie, one of the New Orleans guys, and then I'll see who that third stud is. If I could get all the way up to Joker, great. If I can't, I'll probably end up going to Kawhi or one of the other mid-range studs that we were talking about. Whether it's Devontae Graham and Josh Hart, Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Josh Hart, one of those guys. Use a very inexpensive center in Isaiah Stewart or Hartenstein. Your lineup's flying. I love it. I like the way the rosters are building out right now.
Look at that. Yeah, and look, I feel like that's where you're starting out. Russell Westbrook, Kyrie Irving. I feel like this is exactly where you're starting out with a lot of your lineups, the players on the board. Now, Hart, Alexander-Walker, interchangeable, so, I could put him in as well, but that's basically where you're starting, right? With these players right here. There you go. The news came out now, so everybody's going to be asking about it for the lineups. WinDailySports.com/chat. Check out the Discord, and of course, Ghost Gems before lineups lock as well. Ghost, always a good time doing this with you, man. I'm feeling good about a Thirsty Thursday now. We got breaking news towards the end of the podcast, which is great. So that's a good thing. We'll be back tomorrow. Hey, on a Friday as well. So a lot more NBA to go through. Keep it locked in. We're WinDailySports.com, at WinDailySports on Twitter. We'll be back. NBA DFS, good luck. And let's go Westbrook, Kyrie Irving. Let's have a day.